Every town, city, or hamlet has its ghost stories, tales whispered in hushed tones around flickering campfires, tales that are as old as the streets themselves. In our quiet town, it was the old asylum, a haunting monument of dark and chilling history that captured the imagination and fear of everyone. This monolithic 3-story edifice of despair was located on the outskirts of our town, its stone walls covered with moss and ivy. Its windows were empty, like the eyes of a skull, adding to its eerie appearance. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, yet the stories of the anguished spirits of former patients haunting the premises refused to die. The chilling stories painted vivid pictures of terrifying apparitions, eerie voices, and sudden cold spots. Being a rational person with a great interest in science and facts, I found myself dismissing these tales as nothing more than superstition. The asylum was, to me, just an old, decrepit building, until one bone-chilling incident made me question my skepticism. It was a moonless night, and I was returning home from a friend's place. A missed turn led me onto the overgrown path that twisted its way towards the foreboding asylum. The area was shrouded in an unsettling darkness, the only light coming from the dim headlights of my car. As a feeling of unease began to prickle at the back of my neck, I decided to turn around. But before I could do so, my reliable old car let out a shuddering gasp and died. I tried the ignition multiple times, but the car remained silent, leaving me stranded next to the ominous asylum, shrouded in darkness and an unsettling silence. As I pondered my next move, I heard a faint noise. It was a soft whimper, carried on the wind, seeming to emanate from the bowels of the asylum. My rational mind attributed it to the rustling leaves or some small nocturnal creature. But then it came again, distinct and undeniable, a child's whimper growing into a sob. Before I realized it, I found myself stepping out of the car and slowly walking towards the asylum, drawn by the heart-rending sobs. The asylum loomed over me, its dark silhouette appearing even more menacing under the cloudy night sky. Gathering my courage, I pushed open the rusted iron gate, its squeal piercing the silence of the night. Stepping onto the asylum's property, I was met with a sight of decay and abandonment. Crumbling stone, broken glass, and an oppressive sadness. But what scared me the most was the corridor, a long stretch of gloom leading towards an unsteady flicker of light. With my heart pounding against my ribs, I walked down the corridor, each step echoing in the desolate silence. The sobbing was now replaced by the soft melody of a lullaby, its innocence in stark contrast to the eerie surroundings. The flickering light came from an open room at the end of the corridor. Mustering my courage, I approached it. The room was barren, save for a small figure sitting in the middle, bathed in the faint light. A little girl no older than 7 was sitting with her back towards me, humming the lullaby. Swallowing my fear, I called out to her, my voice seeming to be absorbed by the thick silence. At my words, the humming stopped. The girl turned around slowly, her hollow eyes and a chillingly wide smile visible in the dim light. Horror coursed through my veins, and I stumbled backwards. Tripping over some debris, I fell, hitting my head on the cold, hard floor. When I regained consciousness, I was lying at the side of the road, the first rays of dawn painting the sky. My car was parked nearby, purring gently as if it had never refused to start. No one believed my tale. They dismissed it as a dream, a product of stress or perhaps too much imagination. But I know what I saw and what I heard. The asylum, for me, is no longer a haunted structure from some urban legend. It is a chilling memory that sends shivers down my spine. I can still hear the eerie lullaby, and the haunting image of the girl's hollow eyes and terrifying smile appears every time I close my eyes. Whenever the tales of the haunted asylum are whispered in hushed tones, I can't help but shudder, haunted forever by my spine-chilling encounter. The sun was setting, its golden glow retreating behind the skyline as I locked up my office for the day. As a journalist for a small but respected local newspaper, my recent assignment involved a strange series of burglaries. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, but as the days rolled by, these incidents spiraled into something far more unsettling. The first burglary was reported 2 weeks prior. Nothing unusual. A couple of valuables gone missing, a distressed Pomeranian left behind, but no indication of forced entry. Then 2 days later, a second burglary occurred under strangely similar circumstances. The victims lived just a block away from the first house. Their possessions were missing, their golden retriever left traumatized, and again, there was no sign of a break-in. More reports came flooding in, all fitting the same eerie pattern. No signs of forced entry, a pet dog left seemingly more scared than physically hurt, and one odd detail, a missing picture frame from each house. Initially, it felt like the strange signature of an unconventional thief. Then, the first letter arrived. It was an ordinary Tuesday when the first brown envelope, devoid of a return address, appeared on my desk. Inside was a typed letter that read, "I watch them. I watch you. We're not so different, you and I." It was unnerving to say the least, but I dismissed it as a tasteless prank. Yet as the burglaries continued, so did the letters, each one more ominous than the last. But the real panic set in when the photos started to arrive. Candid shots of the burgled families, observing them from a distance but undeniably intrusive. It was unsettling, not because of the images themselves, but the disturbing implication of someone unseen, watching these families, studying them. Then came the photos of me. Ordinary moments of my life caught on camera, arriving at work, sipping coffee, leaving the office late at night. The pit of dread in my stomach deepened with each picture. It was a chilling realization, a glimpse into the terror these families must have felt when they discovered the violation of their homes. Naturally, I reported it to the police. But without tangible evidence or any identifiable fingerprints, their hands were tied. Meanwhile, the burglary count continued to rise, each one a repetition of the same terrifying pattern. The turning point came one night when the fear turned from sympathetic to personal. A strange sound from downstairs, a low growl, a whimper, then a yelp. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly made my way to the source of the noise. The sight that met me was chilling. My front door stood ajar, and my faithful Labrador was huddled in a corner, whimpering. As I looked around, it was clear that my home had been ransacked. But the most chilling discovery was the missing family picture from my office wall. Suddenly, my home felt foreign, a violation of my sanctuary that sent shivers down my spine. I reported the incident to the police, but like the other cases, there were no leads, no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, just a traumatized dog and a missing picture frame. Despite the increased patrols and advice to stay elsewhere, I chose to stay. Fear had been struck, yes, but alongside it, determination had been ignited. I threw myself into the case. Patterns emerged as I mapped out the burglaries, retraced the victims' routines, and questioned their acquaintances. My efforts, bordering on obsession, finally paid off when a white van emerged as a common sight in every neighborhood where a burglary had occurred. Despite initial skepticism, the police took this lead seriously. Surveillance footage showed the van in every affected neighborhood. No distinct features, no license plate, but its omnipresence couldn't be dismissed. Soon, a citywide lookout for the van was announced. The breakthrough came late one evening. An officer spotted the van parked in an untouched neighborhood. A stakeout was set up, and just past midnight, a figure emerged from the van. Average-looking, unremarkable, he blended into the night. But before he could approach a house, the police swooped in. Caught off guard, the man didn't resist. Inside his van were his tools, a camera, and most damning of all, a stack of stolen picture frames. The trial was swift. The evidence against him was overwhelming. A ghost with no record or history, he was sentenced for the terror he had spread. The ordeal was over, but the scars remained. My home still felt unfamiliar, the dog still jumpy, and the community still locked their doors at night. The echoes of the nightmare that we had lived through remained, a chilling reminder of the terror that had once walked among us. Though the story was over, and I had penned down the final words, the fear lingered. The ghost of the past remained, a constant reminder of the time when I was not just a journalist, but an unwilling character in a terrifying tale. The nightmare was over. Living amidst the labyrinth of stacked books in my family's small independent bookstore, I thought I knew fear from the countless horrors I've read. But I was soon to discover a chilling reality, far beyond the terrifying tales woven by the authors. It was about to unfold, not in the comfort of my imagination, but in my everyday life. After my parents passed away in a tragic accident, I was left alone to run the bookstore. The world of books was my refuge, my sanctuary from the harsh reality of life. Then he came, shattering my peaceful existence with an eeriness that was more chilling than the most gruesome horror novel. He was just another customer at first, ordinary, unremarkable, but his lingering gaze, restless demeanor, and inexplicable interest in the true crime section set off alarms in my gut. His unnerving presence became a part of my routine, lurking in the aisles for hours, yet never buying a book. The city's buzz started to become rife with whispers of odd occurrences: burglaries, car break-ins, reports of stalking. Small incidents, perhaps insignificant to the police, yet an unsettling pattern began to emerge. The bookstore became the stage for the first tangible act of terror. One evening, as I was closing, I found the true crime section in chaos. Books torn, covers defaced, with a chilling phrase carved crudely into a book: "Life imitates art." The sight sent a shiver down my spine, and the pieces of the horrifying puzzle fell into place. Despite my report, the police couldn't do much without any solid leads. I was left alone to face my fear. He returned the next day, his unsettling demeanor more intense. As he exited, he left me with an ominous promise: "Enjoy the show." His words echoed in my mind, turning my peaceful world into a haunted theater. Every creak, every shadow sent my heart racing. Nights turned into an ordeal, each moment filled with dread. My bookstore, once a haven, now seemed a stage set for an unimaginable horror show. His terror seeped into reality, turning each day into a gruesome scene of a crime novel. A dead cat with a twine around its neck lay on my doorstep one morning, its lifeless eyes mirroring the victims of a serial killer novel. The next day, it was a note, eerily detailing how my parents' accident could have been a deliberate act, planted within a book. The police investigations intensified, but he was a phantom, leaving no traces, no leads to follow. His reign of terror continued, each act more twisted than the previous. His pawns were not physical harm, but a terrifying psychological warfare, meticulously planned and aimed solely at me. The bookstore, my sanctuary, was now the centerpiece of his macabre masterpiece. Each book, each corner hid a new surprise. Every day unraveled a new chapter of his horrifying story. I was not just a victim, but also the captive audience of his sickening performance. I was caught in his wicked web of psychological torment, forced to witness the horror that unfolded in my life, a mirror to the stories of the true crime section. Despite the escalating terror, I clung on to my life, my bookstore. I wouldn't let him win, wouldn't let him rob me of my sanctuary. So, I endured the psychological torment, a silent battle between fear and resilience. To this day, his identity remains a mystery, his motive, his next move, all wrapped in a shroud of terrifying uncertainty. My life is a ticking bomb, each day a countdown to another chapter of the bone-chilling story. The bookstore, my beloved haven, is now a terrifying crime scene. As a survivor, I narrate this real-life horror, not as a cry for help, but as a testament to my unyielding spirit. He may continue his macabre performance, but I'll keep turning the pages, refusing to let the story end on his terms.